We have the professor with us, and Mike Lubie, of course, has stated his position on last night's Dolphin game, angry with all of these social media posts about Brian Flores, which, Professor, I mean, looming very large right now is the fact that you had what appeared to be or sounded like just an absurd
and we
conspiracy
get a little
theory.
like Lubie's getting angry. Can
Yeah.
we get angry that Stephen Ross and the Dolphins let Ryan fucking Fitzpatrick into the building to spread his Lucky Charms magic?
Oh my God,
And
you're right.
First fucking time they do it, Tua goes down with a concussion, probably a career ender. Like, how do you let that piece of shit into the fucking building?
Good for you, Ken. I didn't even think about that.
The fucking cops arrest Tyreek Hill, but you let Ryan Fitzpatrick run around the city. Do your fucking job, Miami-Dade police. The minute that fucking Lucky Charms motherfucker showed up in the city, he should have been thrown in fucking prison. Like, the man spent 2 years along with Flores trying to kill Tua. And the first time he shows up, what happens?
The time. Wake up with Defo, joined by Lubie. Welcome to the Defo Show.
Welcome to a Degenerate Friday edition of the Defo Show. Jeff DeForest, the very handsome Mike Lubie, and we're going to be joined today by the professor, of course, looking at college football and should have a big board for us. And also the Greek is going to make an appearance, resurfacing after a couple of weeks of hiatus. I don't know. Have you spoken to the Greek outside of just setting up this
No.
Friday appearance on a show?
No, I just reached out to him yesterday. We were supposed to have him on a couple weeks ago, and then I didn't get in touch with him ahead of time. Then last week I wasn't here, so I got in touch with him ahead of time. He said he's in for 8:15. So we will talk to him this morning.
A lot of elation from the former Met fans down here. A lot of New York expatriates here in South Florida. Let's face it, it's New York South. And while we have probably a majority of Yankee fans, more than a share of Met fans occupy the various counties here in South Florida. And you would have to think there was a great deal of concern and despair as they entered the ninth inning, going against the Brewers' ace closer. Down 2-0, having yielded back-to-back home runs. What'd that come in a seventh inning, Lubie, of that game? They're down 2-0. Really kind of lifeless. I think they had 2 hits altogether in the game at that point, both by Francisco Lindor, who doubled to open up the contest, had a single in the third inning, and that was it. They were getting blanked, no walks being issued. There was one guy hit by a pitch. And so very scant the number of base runners that the Mets were able to produce during the course of the first 8 innings of the game. And then you could see things were beginning to wander off the rails a little bit for the Milwaukee Brewers. Lindor opens up with a walk, followed by a single by Marte. And then here's Pete Alonso. And Boog Sciambi was doing a game on ESPN, and he had just finished saying, this could be the last at bat as a New York Met for Pete Alonso. And it very well could have been, because he's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. I don't know, how many guys can you pay giant amounts of money to? And Alonso, always a home run threat, but if you look at his stats from this year, it's nothing. I guess I really need to adapt, Lubie, do I not? Is it time for me to forget about the fact that I'm 73 years old and that most of my theories about baseball were established over 50 years ago? Because if you're hitting 260 with 30 home runs, is that considered? It's funny because now Lindor is a sensational fielder, as exhibited by a couple of the plays that he made in the series, including last night, and even the closer as he snares a hot ground ball and throws out an extremely fast runner on the back end of a double play after running to the bag himself to second base. And he wasn't that close to it, but he was able to get there more quickly than the second baseman was to receive a toss. So he makes the right play. I mean, that's snap thinking right away. I mean, you have to make a quick judgment. Am I going to toss the ball to the second baseman, get the force, or am I going to try and complete the double play? And he does that. A great fielder, but hitting 275 with 30 homers and being a great fielder, does that make you now an MVP in today's baseball standards? I mean, don't you have to? There I go again with my batting average. Alonso, what was in the throes, too, of a semi-miserable slump. I think he he was hitting like 140 or 150 for his last 41 at-bats. Listen to me, Mr. Statistic here.
There you go.
And he had 14 strikeouts in those 41 at-bats, so he was barely making contact and looked like he was El Finito, as did the hopes of the New York Mets. And what does he do? In what could have been his last at bat potentially as a Met, he extends the Mets season, throws them into a matchup against the Philadelphia Phillies, which is this a little weird, Lubie? Did I get this right? The Phillies and the Mets have never met in the postseason. Is that
I mean,
possible?
it would
Never
make
met in the postseason.
sense. I mean, for most of the history, there was only a few playoff teams, and they're from the same division, so it would make sense, I guess. I mean,
62 years of Met baseball, and they've never met the Phillies in the postseason. Pretty incredible. I mean, both teams have had their share of ups and downs, mostly downs for the Mets. But wow, I mean, you couldn't get any more exciting. That's the kind of stuff that people dream about, right, Lubie? I mean, how many times did you fantasize about hitting a game-winning shot out of the corner with three guys draped all over you, or catching a touchdown pass with a diving play at the edge of the goal line, the out-of-bounds marker at the back of the goal line, or anything, making a sensational play to rob a guy of a home run and finish off a ball game. And so Alonso comes up there and is a home run to right field. 3-2 Mets. They tack on another run and now move on to face the Philadelphia Phillies. Couldn't have asked for more. We got caught up a little bit. I had a couple of handicappers on various shows that I've been doing about gambling. And the consensus seemed to fall on the idea that the Buccaneers were the smart play, getting 2.5 against the Falcons last night. And this gets back to the cockamamie thing. Where do you stand on this now, Louis? Are you with me on the change that needs to be made in the overtime rule once and for all, where and we get mocked, laughed at anytime I bring this up. And Lubie, you're in the background there. I think you side with me on this, but I'm not sure.
I mean, what
is your conviction? And that is, just for the people that aren't familiar with it, overtime should just be the continuation in the NFL, the continuation of a game. No coin flip wherever the team has the ball. If it's 3rd and 10 from the other team's 27-yard line at the end of regulation, make it 3rd and 10 from the other team's 27-yard line at the beginning of overtime. No, I mean, what would be wrong with that? Just a continuation of the game. The other games, they don't disrupt themselves. Baseball, it's essentially a continuation. They go away from in the postseason putting the guy on second base because they realize, okay, and I don't mind the concession to that. I don't know about you, but I don't want to sit there for 14 hours watching a conclusion of a ball game on a Wednesday night in the middle of May. I'm fine with that now. But and basketball, look, you're essentially just continuing the game, except you're throwing a ball up in the air for one more jump ball, essentially. Hockey, they had to, make some amendments to what they did in overtime, but they seem to have finally figured out a viable way that it's acceptable to everybody. And when you get to the postseason, it changes and goes to sudden death. But why would you subject teams to the arbitrary nature of a coin flip, a 50-50 coin flip, and have such a distinct advantage given to the team that wins the coin flip? It makes no sense to me, Louie. I don't know. What do you think?
I went to bed. The Bucks, I had gotten the ball. They went for it. Oh, the Falcons went for a 4th down. I'm confused at how that game ended. Like the Falcons.
I didn't see the overtime part, but it bothered me
at all. The Falcons.
It must have been a touchdown score. Well, I mean, maybe did the Falcons get the ball after the Bucks had it already?
The Falcons threw an interception in their own territory on like 4th and 15, and the Bucks had a lead. So I don't know I'm confused at how the game ended.
The Falcons ended up getting a late field goal to send it to OT.
The Bucks got the ball almost in field goal range. So I don't understand
that. That I didn't catch.
Yeah. So the Bucks did nothing with the ball. The Falcons used their timeouts, got the ball back, went down the field, got a field goal, tied it, then got to overtime, got the ball, and scored a touchdown.
Yes. I mean, they scored a touchdown and win it, which fucked everybody. I mean, that was on the side of the Bucks. You might have been able to catch that game at 3 points, which you would have been in a lock situation. But nonetheless, our one big play, we did have a theory on that, and that was about the Kyle Pitts over-under proposition bet. And thank you, Lubie, for acknowledging that we were finally correct about something. I mean, it couldn't have been any more of a pristine empirical truth that Kyle Pitts, who had no catches in the previous game, was going to exceed 31 yards of receiving. I think it might have been 31 on a hook. In this ball game, there had to be some kind of concerted effort on the part of the Falcons to get him going. And what happened? I think his first play, he caught a 32-yard pass.
Yes.
Now, unless he catches one for negative yardage, which was unlikely from a tight end position, although we've seen stranger things happen in terms of tough beats, you were already guaranteed that you were going to collect a check or cash at the window and or have money wired in your account there if you took advantage of that proposition bet. That's unusual, though, that it would happen that easily, where all of a sudden you got 32 yards on the very first catch the guy makes. He ended up catching, at one point, I think he had 5 for 70, and that was around halftime when I sort of tuned away from that game, started watching more of the baseball game, and then just got involved in other stuff. So tough beat for the Buccaneers last night. They lose it. I still think that you want to just give the team, whatever the circumstances are at the end of regulation, the NFL should just continue the game in all situations, whether it's regular season, whether it's postseason. Just pick up the game where it left off would be the most fair way to determine the overtime outcome. And yet, I mean, that falls on completely deaf ears, Libby. Nobody's listening to that. Remember, Jason Cole was laughing at that.
Yes, he laughed at it. Yes.
I mean, he thinks that we're always leaning towards the ridiculous, but every now and then, as they say, a blind squirrel comes up with something. And as preposterous as it may seem, I still believe in my heart of hearts that is the right solution. All right, here's a guy that can solve all problems, and it's great. We haven't talked to him for a couple of weeks. I think he did a little bit of a D.D. Cooper disappearing act. Did you jump out of a plane and disappear into the woods somewhere? Greek, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. A little bit, I think, schedule conflicts here and there, and obviously I go where the money is. And
well, that's a nice thing about your life. You still have a job, which is great. How is the radio business, Greek? Well, how's it going? I mean, what's happening with iHeart?
Nothing changes for me. I bring in a lot of money, they take advantage of me.
Yeah, you're a lock to stay there forever, right? You'll go down with the building.
That's
I mean, I feel like it'll come out in my book how I was taken advantage of. But it's life. Everybody knows the game you play. I'm lucky to have a job, like you said. But I mean, who's kidding who? I make the registry.
That's always a good thing. We thought that was going to work for us because we were essentially working for free, but they still chose to fire us.
Yeah, but they didn't see you make it like that. They didn't fire you at all. They decided to go with Fox, and that wasn't you getting fired. It's two different things. Fired is when they get rid of you, and the next day there's somebody on your spot. That didn't happen. They went with a network. They didn't fire you.
Well, I mean, essentially, it was the same impact on our lives. But and that show's got to be doing really well. I hear people all the time, like you sit down at breakfast in a diner, and you have to squeeze. There are very few, maybe one seat there. You're going to squeeze between two people. And what are they talking about? They're talking about, hey, did you hear what Brady Quinn said today on the sports show? Yeah, a lot of buzz about that. All right, how you hitting them, Greek? Are you doing well? What's going on?
Couple of good weeks. Couple of weeks. I mean, it's been tough in the NFL, obviously, with all the surprises. Teams that are getting over 7 points are like 82% covering. Suicide pulls are ups and downs. Last night, I like the over a lot, so that worked out well. But I think one thing we've seen in the NFL and college is like if a team does something one week, go the opposite way the next week.
Yes.
And that's what we've seen in both. And it's just been crazy on a consistent basis, not just the NFL, but also college. And, I think right now you're going to start seeing some better ball on all the teams in college and pro the second month. Because the first month, they don't practice, they don't play. It's a big disgrace, obviously, what's going on with the Dolphins, how much they're in trouble with Tua and that whole thing. An average fan looks at it and says, how come I am not the GM making millions of dollars? Like, I would have never signed Ramsey. I would never, gave all those guys the money. Wilkinson, I think, was a big mistake letting him go. He was a stud. They lost him on defense. So, I think for the Dolphins, their expectations were people were talking about them going to the Super Bowl. I don't think they can go to the Boca Bowl.
Yeah, I had them winning the AFC East this year. I thought I kind of fell in love with the whole idea that they were going to be a juggernaut offense, very hard to stop, and didn't anticipate necessarily
McDaniel was like
going down.
The character from Miami Vice. I mean,
right? Right.
Yeah, he's so lax. I met him, and he's just as lax a person as he is, around, and he's got his watch for $280,000. You better sell it. And, Because time is running out. And I think they're all in cahoots, these guys. I really do. I think they all like kiss each other's ass and give each other big money. And Stephen Ross is another owner who's great. I mean, business-wise and what he did for the franchise and built the stadium. But some of the decisions they make, and people don't realize this as a fan, is like, you're stuck with them forever.
Yeah.
Like Tua's deal, nobody's walking away from that. Tua's coming back. I mean, it's just like he's not going away, and it's just like, what are we doing there? I mean, Tua's going to get hurt again. We know that. He's just fragile. But I don't know. I just think the team right now, for the expectations being the way they were, is not good. And they're not playing good. They're just not as a team.
Yeah.
Special teams, defense, they look flat. And I'm going to go old school, which I don't even like to say because I think it's a bad term. But McDaniel, like everybody says, oh, he's a player's coach. It's like a boss who's if you don't tell anybody what to do, people like that. Nobody likes accountability in our society or in sports or man. As soon as you say to somebody what's going on, they get all pissed off. You're getting paid millions of dollars. I don't want to hear jack.
Exactly.
You better win. I mean, if I owned the team and I paid you $50 million and we lost on a regular basis, I'd be like, I can lose with anybody. Why am I paying you? I mean, so
True.
I don't know. I just think the Dolphins are they were more on the hype. And I said this all summer, like the Dolphins are making headlines for who they're signing and for the amount, but not for what they're doing. We see like Sam Darnold in Minnesota making $10 million a year and he's 4-0. And all these quarterbacks that are getting $50 million, you had Prescott, you got Joe Burrow, Lawrence, all $50 million a year, and they're all not winning.
Yeah, 2-0 in that category as well.
Yeah, just something wrong there. The quarterback market went crazy. And it's like when you want something in life, you're like, oh, I don't want to get shut out. But who cares? If you will really think about your life, 9 times out of 10 when you want to buy something and you don't buy it and you wait, you know what? You get it cheaper.
Yes.
And I think they all like crumble to these guys and the agents and we got to have them. And, I bet you on Mondays when they're losing, their agents aren't answering their phone because they robbed them. They just give up their mask.
They robbed them.
Hey, Joe, it's Greer on the phone. He wants to know what the hell happened to your guy.
Exactly.
Drew Rosenhaus has to fend off those calls.
Steinbrenner's book years ago, and he said, they come in my office in February and March and tell me how they're going to hit 350 and knock in, 100 RBIs and hit 40 home runs. He goes, but in July and August, their phone, they don't answer.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's a shame where the Dolphins are. It really is. I think the Dolphins are in disarray. I think they should blow it up. I think Gear should go. I think McDaniel should go. And that's it. McDaniel, I just think, I don't know. And sometimes he seems like he's too smart for school. Like he comes up with all these plays and all this stuff and all the, and what the hell is the deal with plays behind the line of scrimmage?
Oh my God.
We must do 8 plays behind the line of scrimmage every game. And there's always a penalty. Somebody misses a block. I don't understand it. And Tariq Hill, nobody talks about this. The Chiefs let Tariq Hill go, saved $50 million and won 2 Super Bowls.
Yes.
And Tariq Hill is the best player in the NFL? Not to me. I think he's good, but I got to tell you one thing. The Chiefs crushed it. Just like Buffalo. They get rid of Diggs, and now they're a better team. Years ago with the Giants, they won Super Bowls after Shockey and Barber left because they're always bitching. And I think some of these guys, like these quarterbacks, the guys like every play, you got to throw. I'm open. Joe Montana said, because every person I played with was open.
Yes.
Everybody. Every single player open. It's just crazy. But the Dolphins, I think, is just a bad state. It really is. I was down there a couple of weeks ago for the game and the fans and the hype, and it's just bad. And you don't understand how these people get paid millions of dollars and run these teams and make such poor decisions. So, Lawrence, like $50 million for Lawrence, and he can't get a haircut? He does. He looks friggin' homeless.
You got to send him one of your male fashion magazines. Great.
Oh, my God. First thing I'm like, dude, cut your hair.
Or at least get a decent styling of long hair. Yeah, that's throwback.
Something.
They had better hairdos at Woodstock. What are you talking about? My God. All right, Greek, we want to get some selections here while you're on a roll. You're in 1,000% agreement with Mike Lubie Lubitz on the departure notion that McDaniel needs to go, and so does Chris Greer. I think a lot of people are feeling that way. And we've always said this: if you're not going to be good, be exciting. And
Yeah, be something.
unfortunately, even with all of these high-profile offensive weapons, the Dolphins the last few weeks have been about as boring as you could possibly
And I
find.
heard meeting with management.
We were just always happy to walk out without hearing those magic Trumpian words. You're fired. But they never put it to you that way. They just always say they're going in another direction. And you keep wondering why you can't follow that direction. I mean, I'm okay. I'll do whatever you
If
ask.
you want the real on life, bottom line is, you know what? If they like you, they make it just like in sports. They look the other way. If they don't, they get rid of you. And
Yeah.
sometimes they're jealous of you too. I mean, that's just life. I mean, some of these guys with the contract, I think, you look at some of the guys who get screwed and some of the guys who get paid. I think it's just agents in different situations. I wanted to ask you before we go.
Yeah.
Pete Rose. Do you think Pete gets in the Hall of Fame now?
I don't think so. It would be a real disgrace for baseball if they did that. After holding his hardline stance against them, should he be in? Absolutely. Should there have been some kind of mercy? I saw the very eloquent Bob Costas on these type of issues talking about, hey, how about a little bit of mercy after a while? It would have been a better look for Major League Baseball. They could have always put the condition, not an asterisk necessarily, but they could have put the plaque up and say, oh, by the way, this guy was banned from being involved in a game, but he's still a Hall of Famer. But too late now. I mean, you can't wait for the guy to check out, and then you're going to go ahead and accord him the one thing that he coveted his whole life.
Yeah, I think he gets in now, 5 years down the road, because you know why? His biggest problem was the mirror.
Yeah.
It's Pete Rose. The things he said, the things he did. Now he's not out there to damage himself. And as time goes on, people sort of forget. I think 5 years down the road, he gets in.
It's hard to believe it's been 35 years, though. I mean, that's guys get out of jail for quadruple murders quicker than or more timely than Pete Rose got consideration for the Hall of Fame. I just that was always an unfortunate argument that you had to make. I mean, Pete Rose was not exactly going to go to the Hall of Fame of morality or any of that.
No.
He wasn't always the nicest of people to come across. It's okay with me. I ran into him many times and did some stuff with him, but. Other than that, I mean, there were assertions about all kinds of crazy stuff, sex with minors, and all kinds of stories that would make you think that they're not particularly flattering when you're trying to get Hall of Fame consideration. But should have been in a long time ago, Greek. I mean, they should have just done that. It would have been a popular move, I think, for the most part. And
if he acted different, he would have been in. Paul Horney, same story. He got caught betting. Lombardi called him in the office. I read the book a couple of times and said, look, stay away from the horse track. Don't go around any bookies or bookmakers. Do your thing and you'll get in. He got in. Alex Karras, he didn't do that. He never got in. He should have got in. The same to Rose. I mean, Rose was one of those guys like, ultimately, if he was honest with himself, he wanted to be in. And our country loves to knock our stars and then build them back up. I mean, that's the method.
You couldn't help but like Paul Hornung. I ran into him many times at Gulfstream Park.
Oh, great guy.
Yeah, he was really a lot of fun to be around. He was always, and very low key and humble. As great as he was, the golden boy, long before Oscar De La Hoya stepped in the ring, he'd be at the bar buying drinks for people. He was really a good guy. So people did like him. All right, let's get some selections here, Greek, because
all right, we're gonna go with
mixed bag. All right, so here we go. The Greek, ladies and gentlemen.
We're gonna go Boston College on Saturday. My school where I attended. We're also going to go with San Jose State Saturday night and Clemson. And in the NFL, we're going to give you the Packers on Sunday. And there's a trend that when a team plays the Lions the next week for the last 6 weeks, they don't cover.
Wow.
We're going to go with a team that you're going to go, no way, but we're going to take the Giants plus the 6.5.
You're in accordance with a couple of other handicappers that I've spoken to this week that are trying to track down winners in the NFL, liking the Packers and the G-men, as a matter of fact, getting the 6 and a hook. And that's been a big trend also, as you mentioned, with the 7 points. I think it goes all the way down to like 5.5 point spreads.
Like 82% they've been covering.
Ridiculous, yeah. I mean, always take the dog. All right, Greek. And one game I'm really curious about, I'm looking at a grid here of 10 handicappers in the New York Post, or 10 people that are selecting games here in their competition that they have. And I'm surprised how many of them like the Jets against the Vikings. It seemed like
It
the
looks like
Jets. If you were looking at a team in total discord, it looks like the Jets
Yeah.
right now. Maybe only rivaled by the Dolphins. The way the body language was of the two teams in their most recent losses, but the Jets to an even higher level because there's a lot of dissension with players and coaches at the various positions, including the head coach Salah and Aaron Rodgers. But I don't know. I mean, Minnesota only laying 2.5 in a game in London. What do you think of that one?
But it seems like a second. It really does because again, Minnesota's defense is great. The Jets are not playing good, but it seems like one of those games for this season that the Jets will probably win, and Minnesota will lose, and everybody will be like that. And then Monday they'll come home from London and they'll sign Adam, and all of a sudden everybody will be happy. And one thing I say to people, I said this yesterday on the radio, I say it now: when you hear rumors in sports, it's usually true. How many times have we heard for the last 6 months that Adams wants to leave the Raiders? And he always was like, I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave. Then he wants to leave.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just always there's smoke, there's fire.
Also has some interest with the Saints.
All right, we love you, Greek.
All right, Greek. Thanks, man.
Oh, Saints, I would go to Saints. Screw that. Saints ain't winning anything. No way. They're not winning. They're not winning. I mean, if he wants a ring, you go where you can win. The Jets have a chance with him on that team if the defense plays better. And I still don't think anybody. If I was him, I'd go to the Chiefs. Screw everybody.
And those who, as we made an ugly portrait of Kirk Cousins, maybe not being the same since the Achilles injury. Our apologies for last night's performance as he throws for 500 yards and 4 touchdowns, including the game winner, and looks spectacular in the process.
One of those guys, he hasn't had success in the playoffs, and he's not likable. Those are two things with Cousins. He's crushed it. Who's made more money than him? Are you kidding me? Maybe the Genovese family?
I'll let you run, Greek. Go make some money, my friend.
Well, I'll talk to you next week.
The Greek, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so that was a quick run through here. In Boston College, that was also a selection of some of the people we talked to this week. San Jose State, and look at that game. Clemson, you would think
they're going to annihilate Florida State.
Romp against Florida State.
14, no? I'm like, they're being nice. Like, and the true sophomores playing, and it's at Clemson. Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
I don't. That's one that I may not even turn on, and I usually turn on every game, even if.
You're not going to watch this, Lubie?
I don't know. I think that's going to be a fucking. And I mean,
it's painful, isn't it?
On both sides of the ball right now, and Clemson's defense is playing well as anyone in their offense at least is stable. And you have a true sophomore with his third start. They haven't put him in at all. He played the last couple drives of a game that they were down by 30 last week. That's going to be a fucking disaster.
Let's bring in a college football expert here. And one of our favorites, of course, on the program. We bring in the professor, ladies and gentlemen. Professor, how are you?
I mean, I was good, and then I listened to the end of the Greek segment there. Like, what the fuck is wrong with that guy?
What did you talking about?
If Devontae Adams wants a ring, he should go to the Jets.
To the Jets, yeah. That seems a little far-fetched.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah, whatever.
You just lost to the Broncos. That's the dumbest comment I've ever heard.
I would think the Saints probably have a better chance. No?
I don't know who doesn't have a better chance. You're the Jets. Your quarterback's a 40-year-old psychedelic enthusiast who's coming off a blown Achilles, and you just lost to Bo Nix.
Yes.
Yeah.
We threw for 60 yards.
Honestly, you should be arguing Devontae Adams, if you want a ring, you should come to Miami. What?
Yeah.
If Zerline makes that field goal, did the Jets feel any different about themselves, or
they won?
The game was.
Wouldn't you feel a little bit better about yourself if you didn't lose to the Broncos at home?
The Broncos, yeah.
So who had something like negative 4 yards in the first half? Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Very ugly.
Weird comments there. I don't think, honestly,
I don't think the probably on another call.
If you want to ring, you should become a New York Jet has been said publicly in 40 years. I think the last time anybody said that comment, Joe Namath was still alive.
Pete Lamons was thinking about leaving the Jets, and they
Joe
talked him
Namath
into
still had
staying.
a functioning knee the last time that was said.
All right, let's get into some stuff. Anything in particular on your mind out of the sporting world this week, or the world in general?
Chris Greer should be fired, possibly put in prison.
What are you in the Trump
World in
campaign now?
general, JD Vance wears a lot of eyeliner. That definitely struck me with the vice president. Honestly, I would say in terms of vice presidential debate, like if you watch that thing, how are these that or the president? How are these the best people in America for this job? Like I don't
Say the
think
same thing at the top of the ticket too.
that's what I'm saying. I don't think anybody on this campaign has acquitted themselves as like this is the best America can do in 2024. Does not seem to be a strong theme.
No, Waltz, who had, invoked a lot of enthusiasm for the Harris campaign at first. I mean, he froze. He looked like
I mean,
he
he
was in
seems like
there
a nice
against
guy,
Mayweather. Yeah,
but he's got like a Chris Farley kind of quality to him in
yeah.
terms of what he presents. He kind of, the dumb goof that everybody kind of likes. Yeah, I don't really, I don't know if that in the sports world, down here, the Marlins season's over, so that's a good thing. But
Yes.
the Dolphins season also appears to be over, so that's not a good thing. And the Heat really don't give me a lot of reason for enthusiasm going into this season. So,
And you got the
another long
Cats
sports
starting
year in
out.
Miami.
Panthers start out Tuesday night against the Boston
The who?
Bruins. The Panthers, Florida
I don't
Panthers,
know I don't know
hockey
what,
team.
what's
Refusing
that.
to acknowledge the greatness of last season and how much happiness and joy it spread all around South Florida. The professor.
I don't know what sport you're talking about.
All
What
right,
is that?
let's do some college football, Professor. I know you have been faring very well. I mean, last week in another tough week, still come out a winner. So, what do we have on the slate this week?
This kind of like the warm up week, right? Because last weekend we had the game of the year,
Yep, that was great.
Georgia and Alabama, and that basically lived up to expectations, although in an odd sort of way because it was sort of they both blew each other out for one half, and of course ended on one of the most incredible plays you'll ever see from a wide receiver, particularly from a 17-year-old freshman who
Yes.
that kid looks to have some big upside. But did it really answer any questions in terms of the playoff picture? Because I think a very odd game that both sides can sort of walk out feeling really good about themselves. And that takes us into next week where we got like 4 big matchups with playoff implications, led, of course, by Ohio State and Oregon, 2 teams to figure to be in the top 5. And then the week after that, we've got what is it? I think both Texas and Georgia and Alabama and Tennessee on the same weekend, the 19th. So this is like the palate cleanser. This is the sorbet round of college football. But that does still give us some opportunities to look at some games. And the first one we like is your Syracuse Orange going to Las Vegas.
And it's tonight, yes.
Against a ranked UNLV team, number 25 UNLV. Cuse getting 6.5 points, and we like the Cuse here. I think they'll move the ball up and down all night with McCord against the UNLV defense that statistically is okay, but if you look at the schedule, Houston's a mess offensively. Kansas has been a mess in the passing game and turns the ball over, and Fresno State's a mess offensively. So they really haven't played much to go with, and Utah Tech, of course. So they really haven't played much in terms of offense, and Syracuse can move the ball. And then you go back to that Kansas game, which is really the only UNLV, the only power conference defense UNLV has really played worth noting. And they didn't really move the ball to the end of the game. They were down 2 scores, I believe, with 4 minutes left. But Kansas has just developed this ability to choke in absolute epic fashion this season. So I think UNLV a little overestimated. Perhaps all the talk with Sluka at the position also gave people more of a fuzzy feeling about the Rebels than they perhaps deserve. So I think 6.5 pretty steep overvalue here. I would actually make Kansas, I think UNLV more like maybe 2.5 or 3. But I personally think overall, Syracuse has an excellent chance to win this game, and you can get a touchdown. So Syracuse and the points. Let's go Orange.
All right, sounds good. What else are you looking at?
I mean, for Defo, that's of course not only basketball season, but a little reason for football enthusiasm.
I was weaned off of Syracuse football while I was there, actually, because people kept trying to remind Ben Schwartzwalder that the forward pass had been legalized several years prior, and he still insisted on running the ball. And then they made the mistake of giving number 44 and breaking just a tremendous lineage and tradition to a guy named Rich Panzician, who was a quarterback. And you're going to say, who? What?
Yeah,
And that's
I
exactly how you summarize his entire college career.
Okay, I remember some of them not Jim Brown 44s, and they're great college like Rob Conrad or Jamie Morris. I mean,
well, it fell apart after Panzician. It took on a completely different meaning, and it became symbolic of a guy. Well, Conrad was good at Syracuse. He wasn't a great pro player.
Decades later,
but he was all right.
Floyd Little.
All right.
But you had Floyd Little, you had Jim Nance, Ernie Davis. I mean, some pretty good running backs, and Jim Brown, as you mentioned.
Not that Jim Nance. Let's just be.
No, not the announcer. No,
yeah,
Jim Nance, the
yes,
great
I know that.
AFL player.
Well,
he was tremendous. Yeah. All right, so all right, you got Syracuse plus 6.5. What else are you looking at, Professor?
Noontime kick. We got Missouri and Texas A&M. Texas A&M laying 2.5 for reasons I don't completely understand. A lot of enthusiasm in the gambling world for Texas A&M. Quarterback position still up in the air. Connor Wegman may or may not play in this one. Sitting out with that continued shoulder injury. I'm not sure he's the better quarterback anyway. Reed has been okay, but the position is definitely not spectacular for the Aggies. They're a running team. Missouri team people a little down on after Boston College gave them a run for their money, and then Vandy gave them a run for their money last week. I think both of those teams are actually a little bit better than people have estimated, myself included. I didn't make any promises to eat a cup of dog shit like some Florida State fans, but I didn't think BC was going to go into Tallahassee and win that game. And then Vandy has surprised some people, particularly the Virginia Tech Okies, to start the season. So I'm not looking down my nose at Missouri. I still think their offense very effective. Burden on the outside is obviously one of the great players in the country. And, Cook has turned into a very solid quarterback, despite maybe not the greatest pedigree coming to Missouri. So I like the Tigers plus a couple of points. Again, think they'll win the game straight up. Not particularly impressed with Texas A&M, who, I mean, again, lost to Notre Dame. Yeah, they slapped Duke around. And, again, Arkansas is right there with Kansas for teams that invent new ways to win, to lose ball games. In Arky's case, at least they keep covering. So, I mean, I can't get mad about that. But, again, a win over them, not that particularly impressive to me. I'll take Missouri in the points.
All right.
2.5
on a Friday night with Syracuse and noontime kickoff, Texas A&M going down to the points to Missouri. What else you have for us, Professor?
Okay, and that'll take us to a line normally bigger than I would want to bet into, but for some reason, people seem to think Alabama's going to come off that loss to Georgia mentally bad, only laying 22.5, and it's actually going down against Vandy. I think Alabama will come out of that game kind of flying high with that win, particularly with the way they won at the last minute. And I'm certainly impressed with Milroe in the passing game and his improvements. I think they'll just beat the doors off Vanderbilt here. And at some point, again, Vandy has looked okay, but they're going to, become Vanderbilt at some point again during the season. And I think it'll be this week. I would definitely feel comfortable with Alabama. Again, as much as I can, excuse me, as much as I can feel comfortable with a 22.5 point line, I would feel comfortable with Alabama here.
All right. We have 3 games in the books here. The Professor, Syracuse, Missouri, Alabama. Anything else? You want to throw another one in there?
Again, we'll save our big one, the one we actually do like this week, which is North Carolina State laying 5 to Wake Forest. North Carolina State did sort of rally in the second half last week to beat Northern Illinois. It's a pretty good football team. Maction coming up not too long. We will definitely be once again looking at the Huskies once MAC play starts. But NC State, they've struggled a little bit offensively this year, as we talked about on another show the other day. Fortunately for them, the Wake Forest defense is the cure for a struggling offense. NC State may or may not get Grayson McCall back for this game, but I don't think it matters who plays quarterback for NC State. Wake Forest defense can't stop anybody, and kind of a light line this week compared to what you've, if you want to go against Wake Forest, which you can get in some other spots. So NC State, probably the best defense Wake Forest has played, including Ole Miss. I like the NC State defense, and their offense, yes, has struggled all year long, but nobody's offense struggles against Wake Forest. So the one we really like this week, NC State minus the 5.5.
All right, excellent. The professor with 4 plays for you here on a Degenerate Friday, and that brings us to the moment many people wait for as the highlight of the show all week long, and that would be the big board. And a lot of interesting things, as you said. I mean, so many things going on in the world of sports, fascinating stuff. But where did you head? What direction did you go in with the big board this week?
Well, HBO broke a big story this week, supposedly, with an announcement that they have an upcoming documentary on the development of Bitcoin, and that they claim is going to shock the world because they have discovered the identity of one Satoshi Nakamoto, which, of course, is one of the big mysteries really in the world. The man who invented Bitcoin, who has managed to remain anonymous throughout the course of its development. And some people speculate may have billions and billions of hidden dollars worth of hidden Bitcoins to his name. One Satoshi Nakamoto, who's again, but HBO says they have identified him. And that leads us to this week's big board, which, if Louie wants to pull it up, is the big board of people in sports who are the most likely to be Satoshi Nakamoto.
Isn't he starting for the Dodgers in the first game of their playoff series against the Padres?
Interesting you say that, Defo.
It's Satoshi Nakamoto. Yes.
It's interesting that you say that because there is a tie-in, and it is at the number 5 position. Satoshi Nakamoto, of course, the pseudonym of the man who invented Bitcoin. If it's going to be somebody from the world of sports, let's start with number 5. Who is it? A Japanese baseball player.
Yeah.
Yes.
I want to take people to the start of Bitcoin. And when people, before like these cultists got onto the idea that this was going to become the world's reserve currency, that this was going to replace the US dollar as the currency the entire world accepted, more valuable than gold, more important than any fiat currency, a currency we could all trust, a digital currency that for about the first 5 years of it was only used to pay for online pornography and gambling, which the 2 biggest Japanese baseball stars, these are men, of course, Ohtani, who specializes in gambling, particularly online gambling, apparently, and Hideki Matsui, a man who had a porn collection that numbered more than 55,000 videos that he enjoyed talking to reporters about. Now, of course, Matsui was a rare guy who didn't mind if you knew about his porn collection. In fact, wanted you to know about his porn collection. But, for all the rest of us who have the decency to try to hide our habits when coming to porn, but are also the percentage of population who are stupid enough to actually pay for pornography in the 2000s for some reason. I have no idea who those people are. But so, yes, if someone was going to invent a currency who in its early days was basically only good for gambling and pornography, I would say very likely to be either a Japanese baseball star or someone closely affiliated with a Japanese baseball star.
You probably passed by this place in your travels between Lighthouse Point and Pompano. It's on Federal Highway, and it was like a triple X video
yeah,
store
the
with a
adult-
drive-through, and now it's a farm store.
the adult warehouse. Yes, I always
Yeah.
wondered about the drive-through aspect of that. I
The
assumed
drive-through, yeah.
it started life as a
I need something with
farm
big
store.
tits and make sure her legs are spread for the first 4 minutes of the video. Okay, come on up.
How do you even order that?
$9.95. Yeah.
What was that
What?
thing? The jerk off thing that yeah, I need a vibrating fake vagina. Yeah,
I need a
I
picture of Sally Fitz
yeah,
satisfying
I
herself.
didn't really understand the drive-through porn store, but hey, Hideki Matsui would probably
Yeah.
You love
have
it.
All
enjoyed
right.
the
Yeah,
story.
the Otani angle, I can definitely see, especially with the
Again, I think
somewhat
people
uncertain nature of what Bitcoin exactly is.
exactly a nonsense thing that really probably should have stayed strictly as currency for gambling and pornography, but has now kind of taken over the world.
Yeah, I have a feeling I can identify one of the people that's somewhere in the next four. All right, that's number 5. Japanese baseball players, most likely to be this Nakahoma guy that invented Bitcoin.
Nakamoto.
Nakamoto.
And that takes us
I was
to
thinking of the
number
chief. I'm
4
sorry.
among people who are the most likely to have invented Bitcoin. And there's a South Florida connection here because really, when you think about a man who has brought fake money to the world of sports, very few better than
It's possible.
basically invented that bogus year at the end of football contracts, the end of NFL contracts, where a player is going to be due to make $175 million as long as he doesn't get cut before June 30th, which of course
Always do.
always mean his player is going to get cut at 11:59 p.m. on June 29th. And let's be honest, has a history with his players of some shady investments. So if anybody's going to convince people to buy into a fake currency that's just really bullshit money that never really existed, I would say Drew Rosenhaus is a very possible candidate there.
I could see him coming up with his own form of currency.
Yeah,
No
exactly.
doubt. Yeah.
Again, to pay that contract at the end of every year, I got my client $400 million from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Well, yeah, but 270 of it is in this last year that everybody knows he's not going to play.
I still remember Drew. I have this image of him when the Dolphins still trained at St. Thomas. And Drew was just starting out, and he had this big gold chain. He had like a Flava Flav type of chain around his neck, and everybody thought, and the greasy hair, which wasn't popular at the time, and people thought, well, this clown won't be in the business long, but he managed to do all right for himself, even with these Fugazi contracts.
Right?
In
Again,
the final year.
nobody has brought fake money to the NFL like Drew Rosenhaus has.
Excellent. 4
So
is Drew
maybe he
Rosenhaus.
took that concept and just brought it to the world. He's like, you know what? I'm just going to invent fake money that doesn't really exist except on computers. I think that Drew Rosenhaus is a man who would come up with that scheme, and that takes us to number 3. Because let's be honest, Bitcoin is just kind of a stupid. Like if you had tried to explain Bitcoin to somebody from the 1980s, they would have been like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Money on digital money that doesn't really exist on computers that everybody agrees is money for some reason. They would have just been like, "This is the stupidest idea I've ever heard of," and that takes us to Aaron Rodgers. Because really, if any athlete specializes in just incredibly stupid,
Great picture.
some guy who's gonna say, like, you know what's really good for you? Mexican psychedelics. Really the
Yeah, that's taking a
healthiest
chance.
healthiest medicine there is Mexican psychedelic shit water. That's sure, Aaron, that makes sense. And again, if Aaron Rodgers had come to you like when he was first starting football, you know what we should do? We should invent fake money that the whole world is going. And I think we all know at least one person who's been telling us for 5 years. Like,
Oh yeah.
oh, this is going to replace the dollar and the euro. Someday you're just going to walk around with your Bitcoin account and pay for coffee and pay in Publix. You would have been like, well, you're a moron. And if somebody had told you 10 years ago, I have a busted Achilles, so instead of going to surgery, I'm going to go to Mexico and lick toads, you'd have been like, okay, I'd go with the surgeon, but that's me.
Yeah.
But it seems to be working for Aaron, who, from what I learned this morning, is the quarterback of a leading Super Bowl contender.
Yeah, exactly.
As long as they get Adams. All right, that's number 3.
The team that's going to take down Patrick Mahomes by licking toads.
Yes.
Again, if someone was going to come up with that,
Licking toads.
it certainly ties everything together.
It didn't look like they were heading that direction when you had the lasting image now of the Jets with Rodgers with the towel over his head. Not even wanting to show his face, as if Danica Patrick might have been in the crowd with a rifle. All right, that's number 3.
Speaking of tying things together, I mean, again, gambling, pornography, psychotic bullshit, a need to invent fake money. Really, there's only one guy that brings everything into one, and that's number 2, which is, of course, Phil Mickelson. I mean, if you had a guy who needs to move money around for gambling purposes and avoid the eyes of federal investigators, it is one Phil Mickelson.
He's Nakamoto.
And we're looking at this picture. That's a man who,
Look at
look at that picture. Look at the eyes. That's a man who enjoys online pornography. Whether
The Live Golf logo, yeah.
whether he denies it or not, that's a man who needs some cash to pay for his online porn.
Yeah.
And
No
then
doubt about it.
a man who's going to engage in shady currency deals certainly seems to qualify if you got a bunch of Saudi money that you need to hide.
Yes.
Because, they're paying you off to not talk about murdered journalists. Phil Mickelson, that's certainly a man with a need to be able to move money in secret. I think if it's going to be somebody from the world of sports, Phil, he may not be the number 1 candidate, but he's the candidate who ties all of these needs for the creation of Bitcoin.
The insider trading, the large losing wagers, many reasons. Yeah. Why Phil would be very high on this list, which he is at number 2.
Number 2 and number 1. Maybe not the most likely of picks, but I think another guy. Again, bullshit investments, a need for money, and absolutely psychotic. If it's going to be somebody from the world, and honestly explains his anonymity because he's had a need to hide some money and did a little prison time. Someone from the world of sports who could be Satoshi Nakamoto, Lenny Dykstra.
Nice.
I mean, because if you found a man who took like $50 million of his baseball earnings and put it all in fucking car washes because he decided that the real investment of the future was in car wash joints.
Yes. High end.
That would be a guy who decides, you know what, we should take all our money and put it in online currency. And it would explain why the Satoshi Nakamoto Bitcoins have never showed up, because Lenny Dykstra is a guy who would have like $1 billion written down and then lose the code. Never be found again. Lose all his digital identifiers and be like, I think I left it in my car, and maybe one of the car wash guys took my flash drive. I can't find it. But yeah, someone from the world of sports who ties the criminality of Bitcoin, again, pretty much only used by criminals in its early days.
Yeah.
The gambling issues. Why he's anonymous? Because he was in prison for the whole time. And just the fact that all of this seems like a scheme cooked up by an idiot. I present one Lenny Dykstra.
Wasn't it 60 Minutes that talked about his investment prowess? And I remember when he was rolling.
Again, his investment prowess was car washes.
He did the walk with Mike Wallace and everything. Yeah, that was great. I thought Monte Teo might make the list. Monte Teo with the fake girlfriend. I mean, if he believed he actually had a girlfriend.
That's what happened to his fake money, is his fake girlfriend took it.
Well, he lost it to her.
That's actually a pretty good candidate, Deef. I'm not going to lie. Although he seems like a pretty decent dude.
He's like
at heart.
But how could you be
Whatever-
that badly fooled? That would
I
be-
think at heart, when we find out who invented Bitcoin, it's going to be some kind of criminal. Like I don't
Oh yeah.
Dykstra, having
like
the
everything
Rosenhaus
about
classic.
Bitcoin's history reeks of. This was clearly someone who needed to hide hundreds of millions of dollars. Everything we know about Bitcoin just reeks of that. So I feel like, Manti Te'o may not have the criminal.
Yeah, he doesn't.
Unlike
fit the category.
Yeah,
a Lenny Dykstra or
These
a
other criminals,
Phil
yes.
Mickelson or a Drew Rosenhaus, who really haven't made a whole lot of attempts to even be secretive about their criminal impulses.
All right, excellent stuff as always,
Luck on your
Professor.
wages there, Ken, man.
We'll talk to you on a little Bury Your Bookie in a few minutes here, and thanks so much for joining us as always.
You have a great one, guys.
The Professor, ladies and gentlemen. It's college picks. People always want you to review those, so we'll do that. Syracuse +6 and a hook tonight. Can the Cuse do it? Our man Craig Minervini is at the game, Lubie.
Oh, nice. Good for Miniman. Yeah.
Took a little side trip. I don't think you had to do a lot of convincing to get him to go to Las Vegas. Possibly
yeah.
under. I mean, and when you're making up reasons to go to Las Vegas, why don't you just say, "Hey, I'm going to Las Vegas because I'm
I
a
love
sick,
Vegas.
degenerate gambler, and I love the whole concept of a 24-hour town."
It's okay to love Vegas. Yeah, Vegas
Yeah.
is fun.
But where you're going, hey, well, I really wanted to see Syracuse play, and they were playing in Vegas, and I thought maybe I could combine a couple of pleasures there.
And that's
No,
fine. But
you could
like
give a fuck
Vegas.
about the game. If you're on a roll at the blackjack table, are you going to get up and go? No, you're going to give your tickets away to the girl that brought the drink over.
Exactly.
Right? Hey, you want to go to the game tonight? Yeah, here you go, Thomas and Mack Center. So and then he likes Syracuse +6.5. He likes Missouri getting a couple of points, 2 and a hook from Texas A&M. Alabama is laying 22 against a weak Vanderbilt team. He figures they're going to go ahead and annihilate them. And NC State laying 5 against a Wake Forest team that appears to be terrible, Lubie.
Yes.
So we'll see. I noticed there was no mention made, Lubie, by you or the professor. Well, of 2 games, actually, because there's a big curiosity factor. California and the University of Miami. That line is dropping with people putting some money on California in that one. Wasn't it?
Look, it's
Was it
at
13
Cal.
and a hook at one point? It's down to 10.
It's at Cal. Miami's coming off of 2 lackluster performances. They pulled away versus USF, but they didn't look good for the first 2.5 quarters. VT, they were good for the first quarter or so, and then second through the nearly end of the fourth, they did not look good. They escaped with a victory, but VT is not good, and it's really their first true road game because like all these games they played, even if they weren't at home, it wasn't like playing versus an actual team. Cal's 3-1. I don't look. FSU just beat Cal, and they should have beaten by more. And FSU sucks. So I presume Miami will win. I presume Miami will cover. But it's Cal's first ACC home game, and they are a tough team. Like they play hard. So we'll see. I mean, look, if it's a close game, Cristobal always scared. That's what I've said about this season is I think they'll win a lot of games because they play their schedule is just fucking stupid. But if they find themselves in tight games, a la
Virginia Tech, yeah.
winning at home with 8 seconds left and a team's at the fucking 40 and somehow a play that to this point, even Canes fans, I've seen them go, oh, it's not a catch. But you felt you had to say it, right? Like it wasn't, the guy didn't bat it down and the game ended. Like you had to actually like defend yourself in a goddamn Hail Mary situation, which is the stupidest.
It was like they were analyzing an elephant taking a shit.
Yeah,
When you saw like the 5 guys all piled on top of each other, and did the ball drop down to the ground? It looked like it came out of somebody's ass, didn't it?
Yeah, it's just look. It's VT is not a good team. Like it shouldn't come down to that. But he's Cristobal, so like if they're beating the shit out of a team, I think they'll be fine. If it comes close, he hasn't become a better coach. He's just good at accruing talent. But if he has to coach,
almost clown-like.
Yeah, get the fuck out of here.
Yes. The atrocities that this man has gotten away with while still being respected and having a top 10 ranked team, incredible. I didn't realize the Canes offense was ranked number 1 in the country.
Yeah,
Canes offense.
They haven't played.
I know Cam Ward's lighting it up, but the running game didn't impress me.
No, the running game has struggled. And they don't even have that much talent. It's Restrepo and a bunch of But Cam Ward's a really good quarterback against bad defenses, and I think we've seen a lot of that. And it'll continue. They don't play a good defense. I mean, I think Louisville's defense is solid, but I don't think it's good.
We'll see. Yeah,
not much of a challenge. Their defense is not what it was supposed to be. The secondary is not good. The running game is supposed to be one of the better running games in college football, and it's not. It's struggled. So look, eventually maybe teams will put guys in the box and we'll see. I don't think it happens this week. Like I think they'll beat Cal decisively, and I think Clemson will beat the shit out of Florida State. Like
That's what everybody's thinking.
Yeah, that's where I'm at.
That there is no line big enough for you to have any hesitation whatsoever about plunging.
No, I mean they
your
can't score.
guts out. I mean, dimes we're talking about, many dimes,
score.
even 5, maybe 6 figures, and unload on Clemson in this game. So Florida State probably played a game of its lifetime there. Is Ukulele still starting at quarterback?
No, his fingers fucked up, and so that's the other thing is where we wanted the young kid to start like 3 weeks ago versus like Memphis coming off a bye. He's now going to start versus Clemson. And Clemson is playing the best football they've played in like 3 years. Like,
they've looked sharp.
Is fucking great. Their offense is okay. It's not good.
Did they lose their opener and then they've creamed everybody else?
They played Georgia though, and it was close until the second half. Like their offense isn't great, but it's serviceable, and their defense is really fucking good. And they're back to being able to run the ball.
Klubnik, man.
Klubnik, yeah. I think in the case,
what a great name for a quarterback. Like the last thing you would ever expect is that you're recruiting a quarterback named Klubnik. Klubnik?
Yeah,
Is that how you pronounce it?
They pronounce it Klubnik.
Klubnik, okay.
Hey,
we got that Klubnik kid. He signed. Okay. Imagine Dabo's on the other end of the phone. What the fuck are you talking about? Klubnik? Not to get racist here, but give me some guy named Manny Jones or something. That can flat out fly. That looks like Looms is a blowout.
Yeah,
I'm with you on that.
I'm thinking FSU may turn around after that, but this will be the proverbial hitting rock bottom because you have he's a true sophomore, so he may be 20, a 20-year-old starting at Clemson when they have a good defense, and your defense has been ich. So yeah,
is this kind of under the heading of inside information since Andy was very close to meeting his maker? With the surgery, is he getting inside information from God, who now says he's on Clemson's side?
I mean, it looks like it.
Is that possible?
Maybe.
I mean, talk to a guy who's almost seen the light. It might be able to give you some kind of indication of which way God was going in this game. And you always need to consider that when you're betting on sports.
True.
All right, kiddo. We'll see you out at Gulfstream Park. Looks kind of crappy outside.
It sucks. I have to walk my dog and I'm trying
to
do the math and how I do that.
So much for the walk of life. All right. We'll see you later. Thanks. As always, as we leave you now that.
The time.
It's 9:06.
Let's go to eat a